Anchor Church, welcome to this week's edition of Going Deeper. We just concluded our Anchored series. It's been a fantastic time walking through how Jesus responds to us in storms, but also looking at what does it look like to be anchored. Today we looked at the life of Stephen, and more than his life, we looked at the death of Stephen. And what does it look like to be anchored, even anchored into death? We're going to propose a couple of questions for you right now, some things to consider. And for those of you that might be new to Going Deeper, the goal of this short video is to take Sunday's content and make it more applicable to your life. And ideally, you don't just listen to this and consider these questions on your own, but you engage in conversation. We grow best when we grow together. So who can you tackle these questions with and grow deeper in your relationship with Jesus? We start off by asking this question. Have you ever been shaking mad? I told a funny story about my daughter, Berkeley, being shaking mad. And so kind of just to break the ice, would you take a moment to have a conversation about when you were just so mad that you were shaking? Share that story with somebody and consider that time in your life. Then getting a little more seriously, I want you to consider for a moment the challenges or the circumstances of life that seem to get your attention. We talked about when you are anchored, that your circumstances get your glance, but Jesus gets your gaze. I want you to consider that in your life, which seems to try to detract your gaze from Jesus onto your circumstances. And maybe answer the question, what circumstances are the most challenging for you to keep your gaze on Jesus instead of on those circumstances? Then I want to talk about point number 3. We talked about forgiveness and how when you're anchored, you forgive. Are there any areas in your life or any people in your life that you know it is just time to forgive? One of the concepts about forgiveness that we talked about is that when you forgive, for forgiveness to actually take place, something has to die. An expectation has to die. A memory from the past that you wish was still the same in your life today, that has to die. Sometimes it's your bitterness that has to die. Sometimes it's the shame of your own story that has to die. But is there something that needs to be forgiven? And what needs to die for that forgiveness to take place? Number 4 is not so much a question, but would you take time to consider one day the reality of dying? And our goal is that we would be of those that don't just live in faith, but die in faith. What's it look like to one day finish the race and finish it still holding on to your faith? We talked about in Hebrews 11 about those who lived in faith, but they were celebrated, not because they lived in faith, but they died still holding on to faith. That there was a hope beyond this life that they held on to. What's it look like? That one day, hopefully it's many years from now, but you're going to die. What's it look like to die in faith? And finally, this has been a consistent challenge we've had in these videos, is can you and will you dedicate some time this week to set your anchors down? The solution to any of our deficiencies is not found in our effort, it's found in our anchor. That if we want to be of those that live in faith and die in faith, it's because we have a strong and a trustworthy anchor. Lean into Jesus this week. What's it mean for you to pray, to read, to listen, to worship, to lean into Jesus, experience the powerful presence of God that produces an anchored life and one day an anchored death. I love you so much, Anchor Church. Thanks for the time that you take to tune in to the content that our church is putting out there. We love you. So grateful for what God is doing and where He's leading us. And we'll see you next week.